Well, all right.
Right
My
there.
name is Dr. Sharnael Wolverton Sehon. I'm here with Swiftfire True TV, and Craig is with me again today. Super excited. And we have a special new guest with us, too. I'm going to let Craig go into a little bit with this, but I am super girl fanning over this situation because I have his books and he's been a big part of my awakening and my journey. And anyway, so before we get started, please do your due diligence and make sure to go to swiftfire.org and get on the newsletter so you are updated on everything that's coming up here and what we're doing, and also share and tag this information for this video today because I know a lot of people are going to be touched and excited, and this time that we're in this season of life in the world in general, this is a great time for hope and love and truth, and I know this is going to be really inspirational for everybody who's watching. So people are always asked, how can we help? This is how you can help. You can get the word out because you never know who is going to be watching this that just needs a little pick me up or something exciting going on just to help get through the day. So, Craig, I'm going to let you introduce this guy. And oh my God, I can't believe you're on with us today. I'm just so happy and so excited.
Yeah, thank you, Sharnael. I'm a huge fan of Francois and his work. I was going through some usual life issues, and I really burnt out in my Christian walk, like just trying hard to be the best person I could be, the usual things, and I just completely burnt out with the whole thing. And someone introduced me to Francois in the Mirror Bible, and it completely revolutionized my concept of the message of Christ, the all-inclusiveness of the gospel, and it completely rocked my world. So I jumped right in. I watched all his videos on YouTube, and I just absorbed the whole mirror message. To the point where he actually came over to the UK. Was that about 2 years ago now? 2 or 3 years ago?
Yeah, 3, 4 maybe.
Is it that long?
It's a while.
Wow. So Francois came over. I got the chance to spend some time with him. We spent a couple of days with him. It was like hanging out with Jesus for a couple of days. It was amazing. Did us the world of good. It was a real sort of demarcation point in my life and my friends' lives with who he stayed with, and Lydia, his wife, as well. So Francois, thank you so much for meeting us, and just let it flow. Give people sort of a background as to why you do what you do and what happened with you.
Thank you very much for that very lovely introduction. I'm just so happy that we can communicate a conversation that every single individual on this planet can feel equally included in. I remember we were just chatting to a friend yesterday during our army days many moons ago. When we in South Africa at that time, we were forced to go to a year or later that 2 years of army training. All kinds of stuff that are happening, and then the big day would be the post day. When you get a letter from home or from your girlfriend, and how it just didn't matter. What your letter or the envelope looked like, but as long as it had your name and address on it, it just you didn't mind if someone else, perhaps his girlfriend sent a better smelling perfume on the envelope, or his mother sent, it doesn't matter. You want your conversation. We're tapping into a conversation that 100% includes the individual, and that conversation becomes so relevant, especially in the context of today. I mean, here we are faced with a global thing that none of us foresaw. It happened, it rolled out, and we're in the thick of it. And in South Africa at the moment, things are looking much better. But I'm telling you, I am so excited to be part of this conversation with you right now, and to find a platform beyond this space that Lydia and I occupy here against the mountains, in a very remote corner of South Africa, and to realize that we can actually communicate in a language that becomes mother tongue in our hearing. And the mirror journey has been something that has really evolved in our lives and became an all-consuming occupation at the moment. We have in our website mirrorword.net. Under home, I have a little bit that we recently published on our mirror journey, which you'll enjoy to perhaps read up on. But what I so enjoy about this opportunity is that we're not trying to invent a new language. We're not trying to invent a new modern sounding technique, that could somehow address somebody out there. But we're speaking a mother tongue language that the moment you hear it in the context of your culture or your background, whatever it was that defines you, you suddenly find yourself in a very closely entwined conversation. The people often ask us why we call it the Mirror Bible, and I just sense that the word mirror has just been for so many years such an important word in our understanding, because suddenly we are brought into a very personal conversation. When you look into the mirror, you see you. We've often said that to our children. We have four children and 4 grandchildren at the moment, and we used to tell them, when Lydia and I, we didn't study books on parenthood. We never did. I never studied any book on. I remember Ronaldo, he's 40 years old now. When he was born, the moment I held him, we lived far away from the hospital, and I was in a little 500 scrambler that I had to cover some distance to get there, like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, because I didn't want the nurses to wash him and perhaps drop him. He's my son. So I wanted to be there for him, and I never studied any material on how to be daddy. The moment that birth happens, I passed out in the process, because it was like 10 hours long. It had a very tough delivery. But the moment I awoke to this son, this person, everything that dad needs to be kicked in. I'm so glad that we don't have to go to kissing school. We are wired by design to be romantic, to fall in love, to be loved, to engage in relationship. And it's wonderful to have books, and I'm not into selling the recipe, 4 steps into really gaining a better standing with God. But I'm so glad Jesus didn't come to planet Earth with an agenda to win a few doctrinal debates. He simply came to win our hearts. And really, that's the reality of the Maker, the invisible creator of the universe, that stepped into our time zone, stepped into our skin, and addressed us, humanity, in the most intimate family context that you can imagine. Hebrews chapter 2:11 says he's not ashamed to call us adelphos, sharing the same womb. We belong together. Mankind only has one legitimate Father, and Father God, the Father of Jesus Christ, has no competition whatsoever. A thief in no context can ever become an owner. The lost coin never lost its original inscription. This is a little booklet I wrote many years ago, God Believes in You. You remember that when Jesus asked for a coin, they tried to get him into a corner about taxes. They said, what do we pay taxes? He says, bring me a coin, and he held it up. And he didn't ask a trick question, but he got to the point straight away. He says, whose image and inscription does this coin bear? And everyone knew, easy answer, it's Caesar's. It's very, very obvious, Mr. Caesar himself, and then Jesus just so beautifully wraps up this conversation in a simple statement. He says, well, return to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. And I'm so glad I didn't stop there. He got the punchline. He says, and return to God what belongs to God. So the question is, bring me a man, bring me a coin, bring me a man. Where did Caesar get his image from? Where did this inscription originate? We live in Oudtshoorn and in the Western Cape in South Africa, and I often tell people, when I got my mobile phone at the shop here in Oudtshoorn, I did not congratulate the shopkeeper for a fantastic design, because I knew it just landed up in that shop. It didn't begin there. It did not begin in the factory in China somewhere. It began in someone's thought. And to realize that we began in the mind of God. You are the most amazing idea that God ever had, the engineer of the universe, saw packaged in your skin, packaged in your person, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit conversation, Genesis 1:26. Let us make man in our image and in our likeness. You know that Father, Son, and Spirit had nothing less in mind than their own being unveiled for the first time in the history of the universe, in visible form, in human form. And the entire conversation from the beginning, right through the prophetic age, pointed to the moment where we actually today have a very convenient calendar that can reference this moment, that where we could actually in time, in this time zone, I mean, 12 noon Central Time. I had to quickly go and Google it, and I would have been here an hour early because we had it a bit wrong. So I said, 12 noon Central Time is 8 o'clock in South Africa. So here I am, 8 o'clock. It's 10 past 8 in South Africa right now. I didn't have to invent this time zone. I just happened to be born within this time context. But can you imagine the moment within the context of eternity where the eternal engineer of the universe stepped into skin? The destiny of the word was not a fat book. You know, this, I unfortunately don't have a recent, this is a 2008 model. Where I put it there? A 2008 one. So I think it had about 400 or 7. Anyway, but I mean, the destiny of the word, it's now grown by a third, the recent, more recent one. But what I'm trying to say is that the destiny of the word was not another page in someone's book. It was not another page of piles of Bibles here. And I shouldn't show this around because this is a Bible that got a hold of me a few years ago, well, several years ago, and it's kind of worn out because I stopped reading the Bible for about almost a decade, and then it got a hold of me again. And oh Jesus, you know, let me just quickly get off the track. At one stage, I studied a bit, in Pretoria many years ago, and I enjoyed one of our main subjects was criminology. So in time, I became a chaplain in prisons, where a friend of mine in Hermanus and I would often go to prisons and minister to these precious people, and I'm just sorry, I'm not going to go there. It's going to keep us busy the whole night. But there was this lovely joke I heard at that time, about the Gideons do a fantastic work. They hand out little Gideon Bibles. You know the Gideons?
Yeah.
And so this prisoner quite enjoyed the Bible, because he used to smoke and roll his own joints. So he said he'd go through his Bible, and he says he smoked Matthew, and then he got to Mark and he smoked Mark, and he got through Luke and he smoked Luke. He says, but when he got to John smoked me. So this is that kind of Bible, the Bible that just smoked me at one stage. But what I'm saying about the destiny of the word is that the word that was before time was. I love the way John communicates. John is 90 years old. It took him a long time, I suppose, to learn how to read and write, because he was a fisherman. He didn't go to school as a youngster. And his disciples apparently prompted him to write down, to document and record his encounter with Jesus. So when he begins to write, he doesn't go copy paste what Matthew wrote and Mark wrote and Luke wrote. Matthew takes us all the way back. Matthew was a Jew, and he took us all the way back to Abraham. But Luke went beyond that, he took us all the way back to Adam. But when John writes, he says, before Abraham, before Adam, the word was face to face with God. And suddenly we brought into a conversation of such intimacy. It brings such context to a conversation that awakens our understanding. Can you imagine how your mind is wired to understand the conversation of your maker? Looking you in the eye, face to face, and you just feel that embrace within you. Something happens within you beyond you trying to fabricate a nice little goosebumpy vibe, there are times where you don't feel the whack, where you don't feel the goosebumps, but it doesn't make God absent for a split second. He's embraced you, and he's been to hell and back with you right there, because Paul writes in Ephesians 2:5, 5, he says, while we were still dead in our trespasses. Can you hear that? Not after we've, jumped through a few hoops on how to become a good person on planet Earth or how to become Christian. He says, while we were still dead in our trespasses and transgressions, God co-quickened us, made us alive together with Christ. So that in that conversation, we suddenly realize that the word, I'm just jumping back to John chapter 1. In the beginning was the word face to face with God. And there was nothing in the word that distracted from who God was. No wonder Jesus would say, you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And the destiny of this word in verse 14 of John chapter 1 is so powerful. The destiny of this word was to be made to become flesh. You see, the becoming flesh is not the genesis of Jesus. Jesus didn't happen when he was quickened in Mary's womb. He was before time was. All things hold together in him. But in our time zone, in this fragile time zone, the Eternal One steps into our bodysuits and he's clothed in skin, face to face with the human race. And when John, his cousin, announces him, he shocks his Jewish audience. He says, behold, the Lamb of God. I mean, this is like radical. It's scandalous. I mean, they would expect much more, rather that, God's spoken through this new modern prophet and said, guys, you've brought tons upon thousands of tons of blood on the sacrifice. You've sacrificed your best animals. You've brought your most expensive gifts. Because I'm rather reluctant to be persuaded because I'm not in a good mood today. So we would think that Jesus would at least, or John the Baptist would step into the gap and say, well, what we'll do is we'll just represent God. He's a bit of an angry God at the moment, so we'll have to manage his moods so that we could still have some kind of audience. I mean, we don't want to chase people away. So we just kind of give you instruction. So when Jesus arrives on the scene, John introduces him as the Lamb of God. I mean, this puts the entire religion out of business. Because my business would be to, in Africa, or most parts of Africa, where witch doctors operate, you will not have one witch doctor that could ever make a success of his craft unless he can sell the idea to his clients that the reason you've got this specific problem in your life, wherever it manifests, is because there is a deceased aunt or uncle somewhere along the line, and they're in a particular unhappy mood at the moment. And the only way we could try and gain their favor so that you could possibly be healed or released from this burden that you're carrying would be, through negotiating with this, this deceased loved one. And the bigger your problem, the more expensive the scapegoat, of course. So we will sell the idea of, scapegoat. We've got to get someone that's going to stand surety for this. And I'm so glad that Jesus didn't arrive on the scene to just take the bullet on mankind's behalf, as it were. He shocked us. He shocked us to the core of our being with the agape love of God. And God's agape love is not some kind of positive feeling that God has from time to time, thinking, the world's going through a tough time. I better just communicate more of my love. The agape of God is rooted in the value that God knows to be true about you. You see, the lost coin never lost its original value, the original authentic value that you represent in your person right now is the very value that God redeemed. What he revealed in the incarnation, the word incarnation is a Latin word, incarnate, in flesh. When the word became more than just a thought, just a doctrine that we've accumulated in time, but the word took on human form, clothed in skin. And this person stands in ordinary people. I'm telling you, we can say beautiful things about one another, but I found that within the context of the gospel, we can never exaggerate. So when we say nice things about one another, Craig and Dr. Sharnael, it's just because there you are, an amazing, unique individual that beams God. He bounces off your faces. And most people on this planet have no clue. So let's be their clue.
Mhm.
Just, like a little match that you strike, and somebody hearing this and seeing our conversation tonight, I believe with all my heart that something is just going to trigger in your spirit, and
Yeah.
boom, it says, behold, all things are new. It's
Yeah.
not just a new page, that we're trying to, when we're getting to the end of this year, and oh my goodness, we can't wait for the 1st of January 2022. We can just turn a new page, make a new, this time a really mean it resolution. But to realize that we begin at the finish. We're not on some journey to try and get there. We've wasted so much time trying to get there. When there is where you are.
Yes.
Mhm.
While we were dead in our trespasses, it couldn't go worse. He co-quickened us, co-raised us, co-seated us together with Christ. Those words, together with Christ, bring such context, because before you even knew it, realized it, understood anything. You see, it's not about faith that we're trying to wind up to get you into a positive mode tonight. We're awakening in your spirit and understanding that you are the object of God's desire, and He desires to communicate in words of comfort and hope, not as some kind of carrot dangling in front of your nose, little, no. We're not talking about that law. The law of works, Paul calls it in Romans 3:27. The law of works worketh by performance. And you know how I get people to perform? By promising them a big enough reward or scare them enough. Terrible result if you don't do this or that.
Yeah.
But against that law, I so love the way Paul writes in Romans 3:27. He says, what becomes of our boasting? And that's an embarrassing question for a Jew, because the entire Jewish context is we've got to strive to please God, we've got to do stuff. We've got to do stuff to get God on our side, how did you fare this last week, And so in our whole religious pursuit, even in the karma context, we just want to do good to somehow try and balance the scales, because, we're not faring too well. So we've constantly got to heap things, in our prayers and in our thoughts to somehow just, make a better impression. And then Paul says, what becomes of our boasting? He says, it is excluded. That's most embarrassing. That means I can bring nothing to the table out of my muscle and mind that can influence deity to look more favorably towards me. And then Paul asks this question. He says, by which law? And there are only two laws, two systems that this entire world operates by. He calls them the law of works. He says, no, thank God. It's not the law of works that qualifies you. He says, but the law of faith. You see, the law of works worketh by willpower. But Paul says it so clearly later on in Romans in chapter 7. He says, I'm writing to you who are acquainted with the law. He says, the good that I want to, the good that I wish to, that I decide with my best willpower to, I fail. And eventually he says, oh, wretched man that I am. In fact, that word wretched is actually not a very good translation. You really, the Mirror Bible, you'll enjoy it. It speaks about weighing, like a talanton. Like when you weighing, I had a little scale here somewhere, but it's hiding behind other things. When you weigh that, what balances the scale? You see, you carry authentic weight in your being. You carry the word weight, the word... when Paul speaks in 2 Corinthians 4, he speaks about the weight of glory. In the Hebrew, the kabot means weight. And God's giving such context to your being. You might think nothing of you or little of you or try and hide whatever you, but I want you to know that God knows you. He says, I knew you before I formed you in your mother's womb. In 1 Corinthians 12, verse 13, 1 Corinthians 13, about the love of God. Love is who you are. Verse 13, he says, then you will know, even as you have always been known. I'm talking so much now, you guys must cut in if I need to stop or say something else. But I just so want you to know. Yeah.
If anything, you really need to become more passionate about this message, to be honest.
Terrible.
All right.
So I have a couple things. I know Craig's got a couple things too.
Please.
I personally, so I don't know if you know my background. I'm actually a naturopathic doctor. My undergraduate is naturopathic doctor or wellness. But then I went to Bible school and seminary. and then went back and got my naturopathic doctorate. So I have always loved the combination of neuroscience, the body, the quantum field, quantum physics, but I'm also like way into words. And even with my undergraduate in my seminary studies, and I mean, I've always been intrigued by the study of words in the Bible, which is why I love your translation, because one of the things that I found is, going through different churches and religions, seeing, certain translations written and not going the extra mile to actually see, well, is that what it really means at the point I would take everyone's word for it. I would just read it and go, that's what it means. Someone told me that. And then I would go with that translation. But later, the older that I would get, I was looking into the Strongs and the Hebrew and, the whole Greek, and just getting the layers of what things meant, and kind of found out that a lot of the ways to me that things were translated or presented were completely different than what was presented, and maybe even the context was off, and things were missing and mistranslated and left out, or maybe the writer who translated it came up with a whole different idea of what he thought or she thought. So what I love about your translation is, to me, it does, the focus is more, it's full, it's more full to me, and it gives you gave me a different slant on some of the things, and to me it was a more accurate translation, number one, and also the mirror part, because of quantum physics and knowing that God is in me, in my DNA, and that is already, there's no separation, and then that projects into the field. Well, that means everyone that we come up to, everyone that comes in our field, is actually God in skin, and just a reflection of what we're projecting back to us, to see how we can upgrade, and whether it's good or bad, and go, oh, well, I don't like that in me, so here's an opportunity to look at myself through you, and I've just used you to reflect back to me in that mirror, whether it was actual a scripture or a real life person. As we're reading, we can go, wow, I need to maybe recalculate a little bit here, or whether it's a situation, hey, let's recalculate. And if we're open and aware of that, then we can do that all the time to get to that place of where we're looking face to face, because we're clearing and we're taking ownership and responsibility. We're being responsible with anything that doesn't line up with Christ and consciousness and love, who is God. And my former, as I say former, he's passed, but Bob Jones was a mentor to me, and still is. He comes in my dreams. I'm looking at him right now. But I keep his picture here all the time, and he would, yeah, he's here. He showed up now. He would always say that in an encounter he had, is that God told him, only asked him one question: did you learn to love? Like, that's the whole reason why we're here, is to be that mirror of love to every person that we can come in contact with, to ignite anyone in our field with the love of Christ, whether it's deed or silence, just an energetic, whatever we can do, whether it's an action, whether it's in writing, post, paying a bill, all the things that we do every day, to do that with the essence of Christ, and to send love in everything that we do. That to me is another form of mirroring. So my question is, translating all of this, did you see a lot of discrepancies and like, wow, I think this could be better in a way? I mean, or miscommunications in some places maybe. Did you feel like you upgraded it in a way?
I think, am I okay? Can I speak? Right. I was privileged to go to the University of Pretoria many years ago, 40, 50 years ago, not by free will. My dad kind of, anyway, long story, but you can read it on our mirror journey. But what I wasn't really a student, and I was the year before I went to university. It was after the army. I joined Youth for Christ, and I was working with Youth for Christ, and we were working at one stage. We pioneered Youth for Christ in Namibia as a small team, and then the last term I was part of a team that worked in a very, very tough part of Johannesburg. It was called Doornfontein. It was, even the police would struggle to go there at night often, because it was just a very dangerous area where all the druggies hung out and the prostitutes. And I just had such an overwhelming sense of, in the little that I knew, but I knew enough about God's love to witness love transforming people's lives. And at that time, I just felt so triggered to actually do this for the rest of my life. And I phoned my dad. I said, I know. I had no clue what I was going to do after school and after. I don't know where I'm going to go. So anyways, I felt this, I want to go here. And my dad encouraged me to go to university and study. And he was part of the Dutch Reformed Church. And there was like you do 7 years, 3 years admission to theology, and then 4 years theology. Thank God I got kicked out before I had to go into the 4-year theology. But I did 3 years and for BA, and in my final exam all kinds. Anyway, but what I so enjoyed was just being triggered, because I grew up in a home where the Bible, the Word of God, was like we made an idol of the Bible, get a better looking Bible anyway. But in my parents' house, we were not allowed to put another object on the Bible. The Bible, you had put everything else, and we grew up with, that's it, the Word of God. And I respect and love the conversation of God. But in my keenness to suddenly realize that, hey, we're sitting with this little booklet. Greek New Testament. Oh, sorry. Where's the other one? It's by Metzger. It's little commentary on all the variants, the textual variants. Oh, let me reach out for it. This is my travel Bible. I traveled the Bible for many, many years now. I love it. But this little textual commentary on the Greek New Testament, it was such an eye-opener, eventually, when I realized that, listen, we're dealing with we do not have one original text. We have texts that was transcribed and again and again and again. And in many instances, what I do in the Mirror Bible, I call it a paraphrase, because I take the liberty to gaze into the individual components of the word. And I've got a lovely study on our Mirror page, mirrorword.net. Under home, you can look under FAQ, frequently asked questions. And I started off with the whole concept of etymologia in the Greek, etymology, where the components of the words carry meaning. Now, obviously, in many, many languages today, you can no longer just break, because language evolves, and sometimes the meanings depart far away from the components. It could never make sense. But I thank God for Holy Spirit that brings context to this conversation. And within this context, like Paul, whoever wrote the book of Hebrews, perhaps one of his disciples, or even Aquila, I don't know. Anyway, you can read it in the Mirror Bible. But I love the beginning of that, the opening of that letter, where it says that in many and various ways God spoke in fragments, prophetic, profound little fragments, to our fathers through the prophets. But in these last days, in the eschatos, the eschatology of God is a conversation that is communicated in sonship. It doesn't say in the Son, in sonship. And then he continues to say how the Son exhibits God, radiates God. He says, you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And it concludes with, having made purification for sins, he sat down. So the very throne of the authority of this conversation is your redeemed innocence. That puts religion out of business. You don't have to spend another moment to get more innocent than what you are declared, because the body on the cross was a document of humanity's guilt. The body raised from the grave was the document, the receipt of your acquittal. Paul says in Romans 4:25, he says he was handed over because of our transgressions, and the little word dia, that little word dia means because of. He says he was raised, dear, because of your innocence. I remember one day I was Lydia and I traveled in Poland. We were ministering there from little town to town. And the one morning we were just there for the one night at this one particular little town, and we slept at the pastor's house. And the next morning, when I wake up, he's still sitting in the breakfast table. He says, I didn't sleep last night. And he's crying. He says he's got his interlinear Polish Greek Bible there. He says, I've never seen this before. Romans 4:25. He says, just my encounter last night. And he's crying. He says, it transformed my life. It transformed my gospel, my message. He says, we've always preached righteousness is something you've got to strive towards. It's the end of the journey. You've got to struggle hard to get there and get holier and get better and reshape your life. No. He says, it's the same word, dia. It's that word that released what I mean, you can go and read 1 Peter 1 verse 18 and 19. You'll enjoy that about the value that you carry. And so just to get back to your question, the individual little words and the components of the words carry such weight. It brings. I'm a treasure hunter. I really am. I love treasures. You can. It often has to just rearrange my what do you call this, window shelves. I put everything on it. When the kids come to visit, they go, we live here on a farm and there's some old ruins, and they love going to dig around in the old ruins and find little chips of porcelain, of 200 years, 300 years ago, and they and little bits and pieces that you attach value to because it's from some age. You know what I mean? And we even get the old ancient tools that people would use who lived here many thousands or millions of years ago. But here we are, when we discover a treasure that brings our understanding to a place of value. Can I just bring one little thought here that I just cannot leave it out? It's Matthew 13:44, the most beautiful parable that Jesus tells. He says the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure that is hidden in a field. And the Greek word there, agri, is where we get the word agriculture from. In the Afrikaans, which is my mother tongue in South Africa, is kind of Dutch. Afrikaans, a young language, only 200 years, not even. Anyway, in Afrikaans, it's the word asailant, an agricultural field. So Jesus has his audience, Jewish businessmen and farmers. He has them captivated with this opening statement. He says the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure that is hidden in an agricultural field. Now, immediately, that means there is more to this field than what meets the eye. Any agricultural field in any culture can only have its value in terms of its produce. When you harvest wine vats, the farm is sold in context. Its market value is in context of what you can harvest from this field or wheat or whatever it is. And yet Jesus says this treasure, the kingdom treasure, is hidden in this field. And he says, and a man discovers this treasure. And what does this man do? He goes away. And the Jews would think, the people in his audience, see, this man has an incredible advantage. He's able now to offer a very reduced value in the market to buy that field, especially if that field represents the world, and it's neglected and it's like torn to pieces and it's been abused. And he says, but no, this man goes and he sells all that he has and he buys the entire field.
Wow.
You see, when we realize that the transaction was not to buy us back from a devil. I mean, a thief never becomes an owner. When Jesus tells the story in Luke 15 about the lost son, the lost coin, the lost sheep, the word lost is the key. You cannot be lost unless you belong. To begin with, you can't say, "Well, I lost a mobile device, or a laptop." If it was never yours, you don't have a standing in any kind of court of law. But here we are. Psalm 24 verse 1 says, "The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and those who dwell in it." But yeah, I'm just getting off again, but because it's just the little words make such a difference. And what I love, initially I was just keen to do a few key chapters. I've got no idea what the time is. Okay, I did a few key chapters. I felt these chapters are really key to our understanding of the Father that Jesus came to introduce us to. We're not dealing with a stubborn, reluctant God with a frown on the forehead, and we've got to try and influence God to be nice. No, we are smacked in our faces with the love of God. We say, oh my goodness, how could God love me this much? Does he really know me? He says, I knew you before I formed you in your mother's womb, and I've never changed my mind about you. Jesus is God's mind made up about the individual. You want a statement of faith. You know, there's only one faith that matters, not what we believe or a million others, but what God believes. Ephesians 4 says there's only one faith. So Jesus is God's statement of faith concerning you. So when God looks at you, he doesn't look at you with Jesus' glasses on. He looks at you and he loves you. But his son came to communicate a message, because now back to Matthew 13:44. This man goes and he sells all that he has and he buys the entire field. Now the earth is already the Lord's and the fullness of the world and those who dwell in it. But if in our minds we haven't understood the ownership that our Maker has upon our lives, then there will always be a little bit of tension and distance. So he didn't buy us back from a thief. Neither did Jesus have to spill enough blood so that he could eventually win his Father over. No. God was in Christ when he reconciled the world to himself. Why would God go to such horror extreme to be murdered by his own creation? It's to redeem our minds from the lies that we believed about ourselves. We felt so worthless, useless, going nowhere. And God says, I give you identity. I give you destiny. I give you value, because you've never lost your value. The lost coin never lost. We all, like sheep, have gone astray. But I thank God that the shepherd never went astray on us. He didn't search for a while. Remember 99 sheep? Okay, I mean, if you get 99, that's okay. You can afford to lose one. You say, no, God is not in that kind of business. God is after the one. The one equals the value of the 99. So God goes and he seeks until he finds, not until he feels, well, I've really done my bit now as God. I've traveled, across time, and I've entered into your history and into your world, and I've done what I needed to do. He says he'll go until he finds the one. And it's in that finding that the one discovers that there's a party going on. There's joy happening. And so just to bring context to our mirror conversation, we used to say to our children that our role as parents are not in the first place to impress you with us, but to impress you with you. We want to hold the mirror to you. For so long, we've been trapped in window shopping mode. And suddenly we realize, hey, with unveiled faces, we are seeing the glory of the Lord. Come on, not some kind of imagined glory in outer space, but the glory of the Lord. Face to face, in your skin, you are his glory. You are the trophy of God. Oh my goodness, there are so many examples. If you go to our frequently asked questions in the Mirror Study Bible, I've got many examples here on the etymology of the word. I said, I'll just read this one. The fact that in human conscience, I just love the way. The fact that in human conscience we have the invisible written logos fully preserved and recorded to reflect in the resonance echo within us. We are compatible by design to hear with inner ears. I love what Paul says in Romans 1:19. He says, God is not a stranger to anyone. Whatever can be known of God is manifest in man. God has revealed it in the very core of our being, which bears witness within our conscience. And then Paul writes in Ephesians 3:4, he says, when you read this, oh gosh, where am I now? Are you guys still there?
We're here. Can you see us?
I can't see you. I must just go back because I went to a little...
we can see you fine.
Can you see me fine?
Yep.
Stream yard. There we go. Right. I just paged on. We're still here. So Paul says, when you read this, I love this. He says in Ephesians 3:4, he says, when you read this, imagine this. Paul wrote this stuff 2,000 plus years ago. And he says, when you read this, you will perceive my insight. I was a young missionary man, and oh my goodness, I read that one day and I just wept. I said, oh my God, what weight Paul carried in his understanding that he could scribble down a thought having no connection with internet or postal service. I mean, he's in prison, he's like locked in. He has no future. He's like sealed. He's a sealed voice. But he says, when you read this, you will perceive my insight. Later in 2 Corinthians 4, Paul says in verse 13, he says, we have the same spirit of faith as he had who wrote. And hang on, he's quoting 1,000 years of history ago. 1,000 years ago, before Paul, David wrote in Psalm 116, he says, and to bring context, because Paul's going through huge suffering when he writes 2 Corinthians 4, he speaks about these narrow, claustrophobic spaces that he's been trapped in, the beatings he's taken, the ridicule, they've hammered him. 5 times he's received the 39 lashes. There was not a spot in his body that wasn't scarred. And then he reminds himself that 1,000 years ago, David wrote, I believe, and so I speak. And now he says, we don't have this conversation of 1,000 years ago watered down, so we can just kind of tap in, but it's not as strong as it was when David saw it. We perceive with the same insight what David spoke. And just before David wrote that, he says, and he's speaking to himself, very good therapy, speak to yourself often. I do. My wife also. Speak to you. Do you know what David said to him? He says, return to your rest, oh my soul. You know that your soul can gallop away like a wild horse, with distractions and stuff that happens, and off you go. Just pull that reins in, pull and say, return to your rest. You see, God's rest celebrates you.
Yes.
God is not in his rest because, even I, the Lord, need to take a break from time to time. He says, no, he doesn't grow weary or exhausted. Go and read it in Isaiah 40. He doesn't grow weary. He says, when he completed his creation, he stood back and he says, behold, it is very good. When an artist scribbles his name on that canvas, suddenly he puts his brush down and he doesn't need to add another stroke. That's you. God's not you trying to, no, let's tear this thing up and repaint. No. God has signed his name over your being. He dances over you. Zephaniah 3:17, he says he rests in his love. And he dances over you with joy. And it's not make-believe joy. He knows. He knows you better than what you know yourself. So that's such a wonderful place to realize that Paul could say that we have the same spirit of faith. We believe and so we speak. He says we too believe and so we speak. So that what David said 1,000 years before Paul is so relevant this moment. Return to your rest for the Lord. Now he gives your soul, because your soul can backchat. I'm telling you, your soul can backchat. Your mind goes, no, but look what's happened to me. I can list all the stuff that's happened to me. I've got reason to have a pity party at least. So it's fine. I'm going to have your pity party, but get over it, because there's a better reference to you. You can only live one of two lives. Sorry, I've got to see one of two lives. One of two lives. A fulfilled one or a frustrated one. Only one of two. And you know what makes the difference? Both has the same answer, your reference. Whatever your reference is that keeps you in frustration mode will repeat itself again and again and again. But there's a place of fulfillment. I wished I had time to just go to that in Acts chapter 2, where Peter preaches, about, and from Psalm 115 in the Septuagint, the Latin, or the Greek translation, 116. But there's a place where we can see face to face, and we're embraced in that overwhelming sense of his value that is upon my life right now. I don't have to wait for another day. Return to your rest, oh my soul. Why? For the Lord has dealt bountifully with you. Bountifully. And where can we find the reference to his bountiful dealings with us? When we discover the Father in the face of his Son and realize that the Son reflects us. You're so precious. Your life matters. Whoever you are, wherever you are, you matter to your Maker. Oh, Jesus.
Amazing. I love it, Francois. Honestly, I could keep going for hours. I quote your one-liners like so often. For example, one of my favorites that just like blew my mind at the time was that, that Jesus didn't come as an example for us, but of us. And that one statement just blows off like the effort that we try and put into be a good person. Just be yourself, because we are inherently divine and born of God.
Absolutely.
Just be yourself and be authentic. And you know, certainly I've got young children as well. Well, they're getting older now. And the idea that God believes in you, I've applied that to my parenting, and I tell my kids, I know you can do this. I believe in you. And by me saying that to my kids, it gives them the courage to do whatever it is they've got to do. You know, if they're having self-doubts, and, you know, the whole Christian message has been, you've got to have faith in God. Well, God has faith in you.
Yeah.
And that message empowers you to go, well, if God believes in me, who am I to not believe in me? You know, and then you go out and do what it is you're here to do. I've been so encouraged by you and your work, and you know, all these tricky scriptures that I've been like, I don't fully understand that. I'll go to the mirror, and it just brings the original intent of the writer to my understanding, and I am very grateful for you indeed.
Thank you, precious Craig. I must show you just in closing, Lydia's books. They're not all available yet. They're on Kindle, but I mean, this is one of the latest ones that our son illustrated. Beautiful story, King Solomon's Big Banquet, you know. And this one, little Stella. It's about Stella's secret, and Wendy, Don Francisco's wife. She did the most amazing artwork. And this book is just absolutely powerful. These little ones. So,
they're children's books.
Yeah, these are all children's books, and they're going to be released soon again. This one is Ka of the Great Kalahari, and then Our Divine Embrace. I'm just showing these little booklets to you, but you can get most of Divine Embrace for free on our website as well. If you go to Frequently Asked Questions, we've got almost all the chapters there, which you can just copy and then we've got it in several languages, little pocket epistles that you can download for free in Shona or in other languages. And we're just so thankful and so grateful to be part of this moment and extend this moment to our audience. And we just give you big hugs. Lydia, wish you could also squeeze in here, but she's here, right here. We are so thankful.
I feel like we barely scratched the surface here. We might have to do another round for sure. But yes, so people are asking, what is your website so people can continue this? What's your YouTube? Craig mentioned your YouTube. I personally would like to have you back if we can maybe look at some dates when we get off and do a part 2. But in the meantime, I would love for everybody. Hi, nice to meet you. I would love for people to be able to connect with you until we meet again. So where can we find you?
Mirror word, one word, .net. Just type in mirrorword.net and you'll find everything there. There would be links to our social media, to our YouTube channel. Someone's just last year did a YouTube channel, because I never did any YouTube things myself, but people would just record our messages. But so on our YouTube channel, you can register on the YouTube channel and get all the messages there, and podcast as well. And it's all on our on the mirrorword.net. There you go. You've got it.
I search for Francois. Right, is your surname? How do you pronounce it? Du Toit?
Oh, it depends. If you're in France, you can say Du Toit. It means on the roof. Like Peter was praying on the roof. Remember when he had the open vision? Du Toit means on the roof. Du Toit in South Africa. They've got the Francois, which is also OI Francois, correct? But Du Toit in South Africa.
Okay.
But we respond to any name. If you look in either direction, we respond.
Okay, well, if you search for Francois' full name on YouTube, there are tons of amazing videos on there.
DUTOIT.
Yeah, DUTOIT. Yeah,
that's right.
And enjoy. Just absorb it and enjoy it. It's great.
Fantastic.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you for an awesome time. And Craig, thank you for letting me get a part of this and connecting me to him, because I felt like I was already connected with just reading his amazing books and now meeting his wife. But I'll tell you, it's another level to sit here and like hear and feel the frequency as he speaks. And everyone has made comments about that. I don't know if you guys can see the comments, but people are commenting on your voice and your passion and just your love. And it's insatiable and it's tangible. And I mean, a couple of times I got my eyes were watering, because it's contagious. I love how you represent God, and you two are a beautiful couple. And Craig, thanks for being my brother, and all you guys who are here with us watching, thanks for hanging out with us today. And we will connect with you again soon. Go to swiftfire.org. get on the newsletter. But please, can you do me a favor and share this video, share this interview? I know a lot of people are in weird spots right now and looking for love, looking to return to that rest and to remember God in them and to experience it, not just to talk about it or read about it, but to actually be ignited to the personal experience of that. And I think this would be a great gateway or opening to do that. So please do share and tag and, you know, send this to a friend or a family member today. And we will get together again soon. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you, Sharnael.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right. Bless you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.